Okay, today let us try to identify the opposites of what we have discussed yesterday, opposite of the peaks, which we will define as the valleys. But before we go to that, uh, let us see how the system which I described yesterday is doing. Now, this is a daily chart of New Zealand dollar USD. This is the current chart. And here on this bar, on this day, we have a peak here. So this green bar here, which was higher than the previous high and which was also higher than the next bar. So it was a peak here. And then the next peak was on this date, but there was no divergence present here. So what happened here is indicator was down to downwards, and the price also was in this direction. So this was parallel direction. This was not a divergence on that day. But yesterday, when this green line is formed on JMA slope, we have something like this. The indicator went up than the previous peak, but the price failed to go up before the previous close. On this date close here and this date close here. So we can see a negative divergence happening here. So what I defined as negative divergence is indicator will go up and price will move down. That's a form of negative divergence, and we get a sell signal at the close of this bar. And see how nicely just after by today's morning the market opened and immediately jumped to around this level, and it is still falling down. So that's the power of this. Now if you have to find out the valleys will be just opposite of the peak when the value of the bar will be extremely low and lower than the previous bar as well as lower than the next bar. So for example, probably this is a valley. Here we have minus 29. Here we had minus 29. So both were same. We cannot take this case. Probably this is a better example. Here we have minus 73. The previous one was minus 36 and the next one was minus 44. So this was a valley. Fine. Now once this valley is formed, to form a negative divergence scenario, the bar value has to be lower than this. So that's only that way our indicator direction will be in this. So in a negative divergence for buying scenario, this was a selling scenario. For negative divergence on a buying scenario, the indicator must point downwards and the price must point upwards. That's what we call negative divergence for a selling scenario. So here in this case, if this is the valley, then this indicator value has to be below this value like this. It has to slope downwards, but that didn't happen. So we cannot take this case. But let us see what happened here. What was the previous value before this point? I think this was the previous value, this point. Why this was a value? Because the value was minus 1. Previous value was plus 11, okay, which was higher, and the next value was also 0, which is higher. So this was a value. So if this was a value point, what happened that this was up above this and then this bar was below this. So we start comparing with this bar first. So we get a negative slope here, downward slope, and we have to look at what is happening in the price front. So we go to the close of this bar, and check the close of this bar, and we are getting this kind of thing. So both are pointing downwards, parallel, the indicator and the price. So this is not a divergence. Though it met our this condition, it didn't meet the price condition, so it was not a divergence. What happened on the next day? Still we have a negative thing here, but the price is also falling downward, so no divergence. So like that we have to find out a buying scenario. Hopefully we will find out somewhere here. Let's see here. Just give me a moment to find out a good divergence that will be easy to explain. For a buying scenario, we need our indicator, the value has to be lower than this, and price has to be upper than this point. So that is difficult to find. Maybe we have something here. This is a peak bar, this is a valley bar, but the conditions are not meeting. Here also conditions not meeting. Okay, I'll give a pause to the video and let me find out a suitable example, and then I'm coming back. Okay, here we have a very classic example of another divergence here involving the valleys. So this is a chart of Euro JPY, Euro and Japanese yen, and we have to focus on this bar. So on this bar particularly, we see the JMA slope value here is 0.3546, which is below the previous value as well as below the next value. So this is a valley. This valley has formed here like this. So this is the first identified valley. And then, as I mentioned before, we have to look for a divergence where the indicator price falling farther below than this value. So it has to fall like this way. So when it is happening, so next day it is gone up. That day also value is higher than this value. But on this day, on this particular day, we have a JMA slope value of minus 0.1265. So this is the first condition here. This is meeting, so slope is downwards. And what is happening in the price front of these two bars? Let us see. I think this was the bar and this was the bar. Yeah. So these two were the bars, this one and this one. So now a classic example of negative divergence. We can see here that price moving upwards, at least closed upwards, and the indicator pointing downwards. So we get a buy signal here at the close of this bar. And then we can see how nicely the price is rallying after that period. It waited for one more day and then it moved out. But that we will test later, that how it is functioning over a longer period of time. But that's what the definition of a peak divergence and a valley divergence. So all the sell signals are generated based on peak divergences. All the buy signals will be generated based on valley divergences. That's all. Thank you.